We had an executive session November 6th at 6 p.m. tonight to discuss real estate. The second order of business is to approve the minutes for the October 20th, 2017 meeting.
I make the motion to approve the minutes from October 20, 2017 as submitted.
Second.
Any comments from the audience?
Use the microphones.
Turn them on me?
Thank you. We always forget. Any other comments from the audience? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next is the Township Manager's Report.
Okay, thank you very much. The Phoenixville Regional Comprehensive Plan is still underway. The committee last met on October 25th, and they will be meeting again on November 29th. The Parks and Recreation Commission will be hosting an event titled Strike a Pause on Saturday, November 25th, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. here at Evans Park. This is a free public event offering holiday photos with Santa, along with the dog walk and other pet-related fun activities. There's no inclement weather date. The Township office is closed tomorrow for Election Day, and later this month in observation of Thanksgiving on November 23rd and 24th. In the 2018 draft budget has been presented to the Board of Supervisors and will be available for review following the meeting. As far as ongoing projects, the French Creek Road Arch replacement, we're working with our engineer on environmental analysis of a property where we do need an easement. So we're still working through conversations and deliberating with property owners on that project. Hollow Road Bridge construction work is underway, should be completed within the next few weeks. The Township paving project is now complete, and the road crew continuing the work on the road edges. As far as Buttonwood Lane Bridge, working with the engineer now, we had met, or the engineer had met with Contact Engineering Solutions, a bridge consultant, where we talked about a prefabricated bridge and working through various strategies on that. And Fellowship Trail is also underway with construction. That'll be completed within the next few weeks. And the phase 2 portion of that, the trail alignment design is underway. As far as our departments, the Building and Zoning Department, 22 permit applications were processed in the month of October. And in the Finance Department, our budget versus actual for October has been prepared and will be posted on the Township website. Our road crew was busy with general maintenance to equipment, vehicles, Township roads, and our ongoing road projects. Cleaned inlets, ditch graded, filled holes in on several roads, and they did crack sealing in the month of October as well. On Beaver Hill Road, Lexington Boulevard, Horseshoe Trail, Kimberbray Drive, and within the Weatherstone subdivision. The road crew substantially completed the rough cleared Fox Hollow Trail, and the Township's dirt and gravel road projects will begin later this month after November 1st, because the bog turtle season has now ended and we can have a window of construction activity safely. So with that, thank you.
Yes, sir.
2 questions. What is the Dirt and Gravel Road project? And about all of those approved permits, could those be posted for public viewing?
The permits related to the dirt and gravel
No,
road
back
projects?
when you had all of the building department did 35 permits or something.
Oh, the report is online. Yes, we'll have that posted for the monthly reports.
So one could see what
Sure.
permits had been granted.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we'll have that. The dirt and gravel road projects are for 2016, actually, the previous year, that we had an approved grant through the county for this work. And it's 5 locations: Bartlett Lane, Green Lane, and it's some culvert replacement. So.
Okay. I would specifically like to ask that you not try to do anything on Davis Lane until the
Right.
bridge on Hollow Road is opened. Because
Okay.
with that bridge, and then with Horseshoe Trail being closed from Davis out to St. Matthews,
Sure.
we are now a, what do you call that? Washboard.
Okay.
And it's only going to get worse if you try to fix it while we still
Sure.
have extra traffic.
Okay.
Thank
Yes. Sure. This is not part of that work.
Any other questions for Erica? Thank you, Erica. The next is the bills list. Tonight's bills list the township bills us is $163,245.45. The reimbursable bills list is $28,546.64. And the subdivision utility plant bills list is $43,309.20. Combined, all three that we'll approve tonight is totals $235,101.29.
I move that the board approve the bills list dated November 6, 2017, in the total amount of $235,101.29.
Second.
Any questions from the audience?
You looked at both of them, right?
I don't see any, so I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of approving the bills list?
Aye.
Aye. Keeping right along. Next is a motion to extend the claim subdivision.
I move to grant the extension for the claim subdivision until December 15, 2017.
Second.
Any questions from the audience on this? Seeing none, call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Erica, you'll take care of that?
We will.
The next, I assume, is why we're all here tonight. Discussion of possible township purchase of open space from natural lands in the Bridcoed subdivision. What I'd like to do, first off, is anybody that wishes to make a comment will stay all night if you'd like, but we'd like you to line up at our microphone. Don't wait to be called, then we'll all have to wait for everybody to walk up. But I want to start by giving the history, at least since I became involved with this project, and David and the other supervisors and Erica are going to fill in the gaps if I misspeak. So it was about 3.5 years ago that I was invited on a tour with David and Natural Lands Trust to tour the 72-acre parcel, and they were looking, I think that we were told approximately $1.2 million, whatever, was going to be our contribution. And it was important to them to get us on board a certain commitment level for them to secure the financing and also to secure the purchase from the Dietrich family. So we took a tour, took us a few hours, we were really impressed with the property, and then nothing happened for a couple of years until about a year ago. And Natural Lands completed the deal, they got everybody involved, and they secured a $950,000 grant from DCNR on our behalf. So our purchase price was going to be fair market value, which the township has to purchase property at fair market value, was $1.8 million. The $950,000 grant would bring the property value down to $950,000. Demolition costs became a problem, and it is still tonight a problem. We estimate those to be on the low side $600,000, on the high side $800,000. So that would bring the property, the total cost of the property, back up substantially. The first thing we said to each other was, do we have the money? The answer is yes
And no.
and no. Nothing simple in the government. For improvements, including demolition would be considered improvement, you can't spend regular open space funds. However, Governor Corbett, before he left office, passed a legislation that the township can take 25% of their available funds and put that into a separate category for maintenance and demolition and improvements. If we did that, our 25% comes to
About 6 1/4?
Yeah.
6 1/4. So it's awful close to the low number, which leaves us all a little squeamish. However, we do have the money, and we could do it in a time frame of the next year do another 100,000, and the next year do another 100,000 to get to the whatever we have to. But that's something that we're not going to decide tonight, I don't think. But I just wanted to make you aware of it. forget exactly the time frame, but the Dewey's family came to us and offered, or actually came to the Land Trust and then came to us and offered to buy to buy 10 acres centrally located on the 72-acre parcel, because they were interested in the buildings that were on it for hydroponic farming that they, I believe, have an operation going in another township, and they needed to increase their production. They thought these buildings suited their needs, and then I think, and this is where my mind gets a little fuzzy, I think we didn't really want to give up the donut hole on the 72-acre parcel, so we declined. And the Deweys then came back and were interested in purchasing all 72 acres, and Natural Lands Trust offered us a 71-acre parcel across the road, across St. Matthews Road. And we toured that, and I can only speak for myself, so. And I guess that's pretty much.
Well, I think if I'm not mistaken, the Deweys came back with another offer to buy the 72 acres that we were interested, and the 71 acres across the street. I think that was the last one. I don't know if anybody.
But that was between them and Natural Lands Trust, not with us.
Right.
So I was just trying to keep it pretty to us. David, did I miss anything?
It's pretty complete, I think.
Erica? So tonight, what we'd like to do is open the floor to you, folks, ask questions, state your preference, whatever. I think I would prefer using this microphone, so if you have a comment, just come up. Hold on, Lori, you can go first, though. I think it's could be an emotional evening for some folks, and I get that, but if we can keep on topic and try not to say the same thing over and over and over again, that would be helpful. Anyway, Maury Crane.
Change my eyes there. Okay, is this on? Let's see.
It was on this morning.
Okay, what do you say? Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes, a full house, don't we? I'd like to take a few minutes to comment on what I see to be the risks and rewards of the township purchasing 72 acres containing barns and other buildings at the Bryn Co-ed complex, as well as how spending most of the monies currently in the open space fund in this project might jeopardize the current farm and open space areas of the township that are now targets for purchase and development by the many large commercial developers active in Chester County. At Bryn Co-ed, if the proposed purchase of the acreage and abandoned farm buildings were to occur, there are rewards and risks, like in everything else. Rewards the township residents having access to trails and woodlands and open space within the Bryn Co-ed complex, and in the future, 20 to 50 years, I think has been stated. Having a flat open area where ball fields could be constructed and used by township residents and their families. So that's definitely a reward. On the other hand, you have some risks. At the July 3rd meeting, John, I think, and you clarified this tonight, you noted that the estimates to demolish the buildings were between $500,000 and $600,000, but the Natural Lands Trust would do it. And of course, that's changed. At the September meeting, you noted that the demolition is at the township's request and would be paid for by our tax dollars from our open space fund. Given that the demolition is at township's request, I believe we would be required to pay prevailing wage, which is one of the things that's boosted it up that you've indicated tonight. And if the demolition was estimated at $600,000, you've answered the question as to where it would be. It's going to go up maybe to $800,000. At the last open space meeting, it was announced that there's currently $2.5 million in the open space fund. The cost of the purchase of the land and the buildings and the demolition of the buildings, plus the annual cost of the bond and the payment of the 16-year LLC, will exhaust the current fund. You'll really have nothing left. No one at the Township or Natural Lands Trust has yet to address the potential costs, which might be incurred from any surprise demolition, environmental, or cultural costs prior to or during demolition and land restoration. A surprise of any kind could result in demolition costs well in excess of $625,000. This was a major industrial complex that operated beginning almost a half century ago. before there were state or federal environmental protection laws. What might be there, nobody knows. The thought of West Vincent Township embarking on a major high-risk project reminds me even now, excuse me for going back, but reminds me of a memorable page in my early corporate life when I was one of a number of Johnson & Johnson division presidents who were addressed by Johnson & Johnson's Robert Wood Johnson. Mr. Johnson had built Johnson & Johnson over his 60 years, leading the company that his father had founded. At a meeting, he shared two of his business tenets with our group, and I share these with you as they apply to what challenge Bryn Co-ed building demolition might bring to West Vincent Township management today. Number one, he said, never get into a business that you do not know thoroughly, or that you are not sure, and that you are sure that you know how to run. In simple words, don't get into a business that you don't know how to run. And secondly, management almost always underestimates the cost of any mega project, as well as underestimating the time and construction and environmental compliance details that are required to make a project get done correctly in the planning time frame and within the budget. This is 50 years ago, 40 years ago, I guess he said this, and it's very much current today. If West Vincent Township purchases the land and buildings as now described, and even with no surprises in the demolition process, the open space fund will be totally or close to totally depleted from its current $2.5 million, and nobody argues that. There'll be no additional open space revenue until April of next year, and typically after the annual bond payment, there's about $200,000 left over, I believe. It'll take years to refund this important open space bank, and there'll be no monies remaining to fund current or future open space. And there are current opportunities, as all of us know, I think, and if you went to the Open Space Committee, they've been discussed. The Hill property, that's 45 acres at Hollow Road and French Creek Road. The Wheeler Ammon Farm, and I think most of you know that. It's in Kimberton. It fronts on Pewtown Road. Maybe most of you don't know this. The whole back portion of that farm fronts against exceptional value French Creek all the way through. There's no roads in there, but French Creek runs that whole side. The property's been farmed by the same family for multiple generations, and 500 homes could be built, or dwelling units could be built on this wonderful site. The Cutler property at Beaver and St. Matthews Road, that's under discussion now. The buying the TDRs could result in only a few homes on 52 acres. And lastly, the Douglas Farm. There's 96 acres on Pewtown and French Creek Road. Beautiful hill farm, all open today except for some barns. I invite everyone here and your friends at home to take a drive next Sunday and first go to Long Fellowship Road. I mean, we have a light up there now. And you go west to Eagle Farms Road and turn left, and then go south to Byers Road. This area used to be historic Eagle Farms. Most of you, or some of you remember it. It was all open. Toll Brothers stepped in and took control. And how many hundreds of homes are there now and still being built? I don't know. And the traffic, we talk about that all the time. But, so next, drive over to St. Matthews Road on Sunday and pass the Bryn Co-ed properties onto Pewtown Road. Along the way, you'll pass the Cutler property. And when you stop at St. Matthews Road and Pewtown Road, look to the east, and in the distance and across the fields is the Ammon Farm. To your left along Pewtown Road is the Douglas Farm, and when you go back towards Bertrandville, you'll pass through the covered bridge and drive along the hill property. It's all potential open space. Enjoy your drive this Sunday and imagine who's going to win the battle of development versus open space. Now here are a couple final thoughts. When Drew and I moved back home to this area from Atlanta, 1998, we were fortunate to purchase over in West Pikeland Township the 91-acre Upland Farm. The house went back to 1790. It's a beautiful farm. And the farm is adjacent to Pickering Creek and behind Montgomery School. In 2002, Natural Lands Trust worked with us to conserve our 91 acres, which is now a thriving horse farm. It wasn't for sale, but somebody came and wanted to buy it, and we sold it. Chester County was part of the funding for this open space easement, and at the ceremony marking this event, then County Commissioner, and I think many of you know him, Andy Ditterman spoke, and by the way, he spoke just a short time, unusual for Andy. And he said that the easement papers described the easement as in perpetuity. And he said, in perpetuity. He said, I think that was derived from the Latin adjective perpetuus, which when interpreted essentially means forever. He said, forever. He said, that's a long time. And of course, everybody laughed at Andy. But that's what happened on that day. So I close with a wish that the township supervisors will first and foremost keep out of the housing company developments and preserve forever, that's a long time, the open space now offered in the township, and maybe have room when this is done to purchase some of the Bryn Coed open space. But please don't purchase the buildings and the surrounding land at Bryn Coed. Please do not do this and commit West Vincent Township to a business it knows nothing about or doesn't know a lot about. That is building demolition and possible environmental or cultural remediation. Thanks very much.
Harriet.
I am not speaking to how you should buy or what properties you should buy or not buy. I've been asked by our Historic Resources Committee and for our Environmental Advisory Committee to have you document or allow us to document those barns. They're 50, 60 years old. They're not terribly antique, but they're a part of the history of that farm, and it's a particular interesting part of our
Could
history.
you just pull the microphone down a little bit?
Okay. So, we have Kate Farnham, who's a professional architectural historian and has helped us with a lot of the photography.
Harriet, I don't think they have a shot of hearing you in the back.
Get closer, Harry.
Says it's on, okay. We want to document those buildings, no matter who owns them. And so I want that. Kate would like to have a fairly professional way of doing this, which might cost some money, but she says she can probably get a grant for that. More to come on that, but that's all I know. But we really need to at least have a lot of vigorous photographers, amateur photographers, go out and take pictures of all of those amazing barns. So that's a request from 2 of your committees.
Thank you. Now I know who you are. Would you mind identifying yourself then for the audience?
Target Practice, nice to meet you. My name is Elizabeth Gavin. I represent the Deweys. Met many of you before, some of you not so much. I think it would be helpful, especially based on some commentary going back and forth on the different Facebook pages that you find folks use, if you understood what it was the Deweys were actually proposing, so you know what alternatives it is that you are considering. The Deweys' proposal is to renovate the buildings. It would start with the outside so that they would be aesthetically pleasing. But if you're all honest with yourselves, you can't see them from the road anyway. So this is, by the time you've driven up there, now you can see them. They're looking to preserve the history and be good stewards of the land, so we're not talking drastic changes. However, the particular shade of yellow that the buildings currently are is a little visually affronting, so the plan is to tone it down, keep it in the yellow beige family, but let's just bring it down a few notches from neon to something that's more similar to this room, but a little less beige, a little more yellow. We have put out pictures of what we propose it would look like. It would include bringing in additional landscaping around the building, some more trees, some more bushes. When the complex was originally built, the intent was for it to be the finest milking parlor in the United States. 2 out in California ended up being a little bit bigger, so they beat them out for the finest, but it was the 3rd largest, but all technologically cutting edge. The buildings are so structurally sound that taking them down is not going to be an easy matter. Where you can actually see the concrete, it's at least 36 inches deep. And that's what's above the ground. Trying to get that out, not only to demolish it, but then actually dig it out, grind it up and haul it away, or bury it and put topsoil over it, this is a major undertaking. But they don't need to come down. The roof needs replacement. So the plan with the roof is to do a solar roof on the peaks of the 2 largest sections of the milking parlor. If you look at it from above, it's almost like the letter M. The middle is very narrow. That used to be the hospital ward. So on the peaks of the roofs, to replace them with solar energy to help the farm have a carbon neutral, if not carbon negative footprint. in the valleys to put in a rainwater collection system for use on the farm. The entire purpose is to be as green as possible and to have a positive impact on the community and the environment. Inside the buildings would be sustainable farming. So altogether, it's aquaponics, but the aquaculture and the hydroponics would be physically separate. The main palace, the two larger end wings, would be where you're actually growing the crops. We're starting with lettuce and kale. It would end up in a 3-tiered growth, but they're all human height. You're not building stories inside. There's a tier on the ground, tier about thigh high, and a tier above it, because there are lights in between that grow the lettuces and the kale. That hospital ward is where research and development, quality assurance, quality control would be. I don't know how many of you have been paying attention to the news, how many have ever toured urban farms, looked at any of their videos. This is not newfangled science, this is not newfangled farming. Vertical farming, aquaponics, aquaculture, these have been around for decades. It's become more niche as chefs get more interested in it, and that's where the research and development comes, especially in major cities. You have chefs at particular restaurants that commission a basil that can only be sold to them, or whatever spice it is, and this is this hybrid that you only sell to me, it is only in my dishes at my restaurant. That's where it has become a little more niche and new age, but the concept of hydroponics and aquaculture is not new. It is a sustainable field that has almost no waste. So the way that it works is you have a fish tank, the fish produce waste, the waste eventually is used to feed the plants. Because of the way that this property is set up, the plants go in the main building, research and development in the skinny part in the middle, and then the separate outbuildings. There was a maternity ward, there was a nursery, there was a building on the side that Sarah likes to call our loading dock. Those 3 buildings would be where the fish tanks are. They have great grooves and channels built into the floor. They are perfect for lining and putting the fish in. Fish is tilapia, not generally known for causing a ruckus at 2 o'clock in the morning. The beauty of having them in separate buildings and having 3 separate tanks is if something happens in one of those fish tanks, if the pH gets out of balance, if something goes wrong, that fish tank can be shut down and not kill the whole farm. It doesn't kill all the fish, it doesn't pollute the other tanks. Little changes can be made very quickly, otherwise that tank just gets cut off until it can be fixed, until whatever the problem is can be remediated, or if that tank needs to be cleaned out, that can be done too. When the farm is fully operational, it requires a whopping 10 employees to run. Lettuce and kale don't need a lot of oversight. There's a full plant every day and a full harvest every day. So it's 10 employees that plant the seeds at one end, they move as they grow down the line, so you're always planting at the beginning, you're always harvesting at the end. A U-Haul sized box truck comes and takes the harvest every day, and off it goes. Currently, it is often shipped sort of toward the Midwest, but if anybody here shops at Giant, you might have seen your urban farms when you're buying the fresh basil plants. There are local grocers that are carrying this stuff, and of course the push is to keep things more local. So ultimately, the desire would be to sell these things locally, but there is a market outside of the immediate area, even if there isn't one in the immediate area. The method of farming in general has gone through a lot of research and development in the last 30 years, but it is continuing, and they are working on which kinds of seeds can be grown in this method. It is not a great method for growing watermelon, but there are lots of things that you can grow this way. So it is a method of farming that has a future. The Coatesville VA has a hydroponic farm. They use it to reintegrate soldiers, often who have PTSD, because the loudest thing there is the filter on the fish tank. There's no machinery to backfire and scare anybody. There's nothing harmful. The most noxious emission is the waste from the fish. There's nothing harmful about the business. There are no security risks. There's no need to fence in the complex. There's no need to change any of the plans that the township has for the parcel, except for the ball fields 50 years from now. That is the only thing that the township would do with the parcel that is not part of the Dewey's plan. So either way, it's a trailhead. Either way, there's a parking lot. Either way, there are bathrooms. Either way, somebody's taking care of the pond. Either you all pay for that in perpetuity from your open space tax funds, which comes from this set aside that apparently is going to be liquidated for several years to pay for you to do the demolition, or the Deweys pay for it. And you use your tax funds to buy land, as opposed to using them to rent heavy equipment and try to knock down buildings that have stood for 5 decades and show no signs of wear. The overall vision includes an educational component. We would like to see classes from your schools coming in and learning about this method of farming. It can be done very, very simply from a 2nd grade level. They can come in, they can plant their row, there are little RFID tags, they can watch it online and watch their lettuce grow for the 3 weeks and get a parent to come back and pick up a tray of it, bring it back to the classroom. Here are the seeds you planted 3 weeks ago. Here's your lettuce, everybody take one home. It's a very hands-on way of getting kids involved in what is a staple of this community, farming, but also in healthy living. That can be adjusted to all of the ages. If you get a high school class that comes in, they can look at some of the genetic engineering and the research and development. It's something that is accessible to all ages as a community resource. Some of the additional amenities that we have proposed, and to clarify, we did come to the township first. It was never the intent to try to go behind the township's back and do anything without their knowledge. We came first and made our proposal to the township, and then to NLT, because that was the order. It was requested that we go and speak to NLT after speaking to the township. It has always been, we've been very clear about what we were trying to do. Initially, the interest was just the donut. Then the suggestion actually came not from the Deweys, but would we consider buying the whole parcel to free up the township's money to buy land that was more usable in its existing state? Sure. For this parcel, if any of you actually have walked it or have driven up Bryn Coed Lane to St. Matthews and gone around, it is very steep. The somewhere between 12 to 15 acres at the top of the hill are usable. They're mostly grass, which somebody's gonna have to pay to mow. The rest of the property is steep, it's wooded, and it's wet. You can't use it for anything other than the trails that are going to exist, whether the township owns it or whether the Deweys own it. The area around the pond, it's not a pond, it's a stormwater management basin that has been so neglected that now it looks like a pond. That needs to be remediated and then maintained. All the area around it is wet, you can't use that either. So literally the only difference here is the buildings remain and exist as a farm in a farming community, or the buildings disappear and 20, 50 years from now you decide to put in a ball field. You own other land that has ball fields on it. You own other land that would be good for ball fields. The potential acreage across the street, if the point is a ball field in 50 years, for far less money, you could put in some landscaping now that will mature over the next 50 years, and you can have it designed the way that you want. We want this ball field open. We want grandstands here, so we're going to put them under the trees. We want a bathroom over here, so we're going to put in a line. In the meantime, it's being farmed. Let the farmer keep farming it and use that income to fund these needs for your property. Or put in a community garden that actually has water on site. You could also use it as a sustainable farm. It's some of the best soil in the whole 1,500 acres. You have a lot of farmers in your community. Have a place to teach them the newest way to farm sustainably, to farm responsibly, and give them a chance to get started. There are a lot of things that could be done in this project that don't require demolishing buildings that are structurally sound and can continue to be used as a farm. John, one of your recurring points, and you said again tonight, was that the 72-acre parcel was in the middle of and surrounded by the NLT Preserve. But I asked you to take a look at the map. It's not. The yellow is the parcel that we're talking about. The green is the NLT Preserve. The preserve as a whole is a many-pointed star amoeba. But your yellow piece is out at the edge. All of the pieces that are not green, that are just earth-colored, they are privately owned. So you're not surrounded by acreage. You have some areas touching on acreage. You have, if anybody can't hear me, tell me, but I'll be stunned. You have this small area here, this area here, and that area there. But this is a private landowner, this is a private landowner, these will be private landowners, this is, all of that is. You do not have a mecca in the middle of 500 acres. Quite frankly, the middle of the 500 acres has all been sold to private landowners. So you're talking about, are you on the edge? Are you a little bit farther on the edge? Do you maybe go over to the other direction towards the Cutler TDRs and look at property there? That would allow you to have money left for the Cutler TDRs. But there are a lot of ways for the township to preserve land and bring co-ed without knocking down these buildings. To take your $2.5 million open space fund, take out your $500,000 bond payment, and the $200,000 that's been promised to 16 years. You've got 1.8 left. This lot is 950. The demolition is the other 950. You're back up to 1.8 million. You have nothing left to buy the Cutler TDRs, to buy the Hill property, to buy Wheeler's Farm. Wheeler's Farm is the only.
Wheeler's not gonna sell.
No, that's not even an issue.
It actually is. His is the only lot in the township that is zoned in such a way to permit such high density use that exists. It is zoned to allow 7 residences, so for a multifamily dwelling, 7 units in 1 acre. You all have been very concerned about the 21 units that can go in on Cutler's 52 acres, but nobody's really concerned about the 500 or 600 that can go in 122 acres. I'm not saying that Wheeler's ready to sell today. I never said that. If you liquidate your entire fund on this parcel, which a third of it or more is going to be just on demolition, you don't have the ability to deal with any other open space that becomes available later. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Brian, is that you back there? Would you mind coming up and showing where the preserve's going to be as it relates to the 72 acres? Could I ask you to do that? Sure. Brian, you're the project manager for natural lands on this,
That's correct.
so you should know where it is?
That's why we color coded it, so I get it right. I'm gonna turn it a little bit more. Everybody see that better now?
And it's going to be 450 or 500 acres?
We're about 500 acres now. We're still in a capital campaign, but roughly speaking, about 500 acres. So, Liz made the comment that it's kind of a multi-faceted star amoeba. And yeah, and when you look at the dark green area, it's probably a fairly accurate description. The reason it's the way it is because we captured, we wanted to really capture the most sensitive environmental areas of Bryn Coed. So really what the dark green here represents are headwater streams. Since most of this area had been farmed, we did pick up most of the forested areas, wetlands and things like that. So when we're putting the map together, that was the first consideration. What were the most environmentally sensitive areas of Bryn Coed? And we ended up with an amoeba. So we have preserve on the north side of St. Matthews. This is St. Matthews Road right here. So you have preserve on the north side, coming down this side of the township, and a little bit on the west side. The yellow area in here, the 72 acres, is what is proposed as the West Vincent Township Park.
So the trails that you envision, is it going to encompass or surround in some fashion the 72 acres?
Actually, when you look at the trail system, the 72 acres of the township would like to purchase is kind of the hub of the trail system in a certain fashion. Just about all of the trails lead in some way to the park. We looked at this as one of our major trail heads where people could come and park, use West Vincent Park, take off on a trail through the preserve. So again, you see all these orange lines here they're not exactly where the trails are going to go, but they're pretty close to it. We're using this as our guide as we start really getting in and planning the trails. But as you see, they circulate up this way, they come up north of St. Matt's, but they all come back kind of to the hub, which is the yellow area.
Thank you, I didn't mean, well, yes, I did mean to put you on the spot,
I
thank you.
figured you would eventually.
I could see you hiding back there. Microphone.
I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Okay.
No, you should get up
I
and
have
get.
a really quick question. Oh, sorry, I should have been long. I forgive you because I'm not on Facebook, so I might.
Your name, please?
My name is Julie. I'm on Hilltop Road. So my first question is I wanted to understand the difference between the 72-acre parcel that you're considering for the park and the one that you toured across the street, aside from the fact that it doesn't have buildings on it.
You need
And
to
why?
speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry, is that better?
Just get closer to your mouth.
Is that better?
Please.
Thank you. Could you explain the 71-acre parcel across the street and why that was less desirable as the park location?
Well, first, I can only give you my take, I can't give you these two takes. But first off, the parcel, the 72-acre parcel is usable to some extent almost right away. Is that your mother? Sorry, Suzanne.
It's okay, but we can't hear her.
So, are you familiar with the 72-acre parcel?
Yes.
Okay, so you drive up, either side of the driveway could be used for parking right now, okay? You get up to the top and there's a terrace level that could be used for parking. You could even probably put horse trailers there. The buildings are, that level is flat. Once they're gone, if they were ever gone, you could put ball fields there. A lot of township residents would rather not ever see ball fields, and I get that, but you could, I'm just saying you could. On the other side of the road, you have a slight hill. It's a narrower property, and it's on the other side of St. Matthew's Road. So the trailheads that we're talking about and the preservers on the 72-acre side, you'd actually have to cross over. So to my way of thinking, the 72-acre parcel is just better.
And my next question is about the valuation of the property. Was that 1.8 million figure, did that factor in the conservation easement, which would limit the ability to construct on it?
I'm not sure how to answer that. We don't have anything to do with the valuation, but it did come out to,
Brian?
Actually, the appraisal that we obtained was 1.9 was the value of the property.
And that value includes the conservation easement or without the
Yes.
conservation
No,
easement?
with-
With and on?
Without. I'm sorry, the fair market value without conservation.
Oh. Well, then, yeah, I guess that's the question is fair market value, since the easement is going through, that's committed on the property?
Hi, I'm Molly Morrison from Natural Lands. The fair market value of the parcel is $1.9 million. We applied on behalf of the township for a grant from the state for 50% of the fair market value. That is the $950,000 grant that John referred to. The grant, when it's used to acquire property, will impose the conservation easement on the land. So with the state's money, the $950,000, comes the easement that restricts the use of the land to open space or public recreation.
I think I understand, so if I'm a developer and I want to come build a housing development, the conservation easement would not necessarily apply to me?
I'm sorry, the conservation easement would not.
Would not necessarily apply to me?
It would apply to anybody who owned that land.
It does, so then wouldn't the fair market value be reduced because the ability to construct or develop on it is limited?
In its current form, today, there is no conservation easement on the property.
But
It
there's
is
no other-
not, it's not restricted. So in its
Okay.
unrestricted form, its value is $1.9 million.
But is it possible for someone to buy that property without the conservation easement on it?
Okay. we would not, if we were not selling to the township, we would put a conservation easement on it, also using the state fund.
Okay, I guess my point is, it seems like the valuation should be significantly lower if the ability to develop on it is taken away. That's one of, the sticks in the bundle of property rights that would increase the value of the property. So I don't know if that's an opportunity to reduce the total cost of the project, but this makes it more complicated than I understand.
The value at that, I think, is around $26,000 an acre, is that approximately the number? Just to put it in per acre charge that what you consider fair market value.
Understood. And my last question is about the timing and when closing would have to happen, what the deadline is to make a decision.
I'm not sure there's a rock solid deadline, but I bet you there's a couple of folks in the back of the room would like sooner rather than later. We personally, if we've been dealing with this, if we can solve all our issues, it would be nice to get it done in 2017. The agreement of sale, the purchase may not happen.
Great. I mean, it's wonderful. Everyone seems to be in agreement that we want to preserve open spaces, and that's why we moved to this community, so it's fantastic.
There is one thing, Molly, I think you hit on it a little bit, that the $950,000 grant, if we chose another property in your area, we would not participate in that full $950,000 grant, correct?
Honestly, John, I can't remember. I can't remember all the vagaries of these various conversations.
It was conditioned on demolition of the buildings.
You would, a portion of the state grant would be used for the 72 acres if someone other than the township bought it. And by using the state grant on the 72 acres, we are able to secure the easement and the restriction on the property that is permanent and that comes with any public funding, whether that public funding originates with the state or the county or the municipality for that matter. So a portion of the state grant would be used for the 72 acres. Whatever remains could be used for another parcel that the township might have interest in on Brincoa. So it could be bifurcated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Name, please.
David Waters. I'm a Force of Nature volunteer. Nobody knows but Molly. Most of my question was answered, but could somebody just point out the 71 acres across the road so we can just see how that would work?
Sure, thank you, sir.
And that was my only.
Is this parcel 4, 5, and 7? I just added it up, it comes to 70 and a half acres, so I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about.
That's all.
Pretty
Hi.
close. Real estate.
Good, I'm
goes
Jim
to
Berge,
71.
Berkshire Road. A couple of comments, a couple of questions. First of all, what is the requirement to actually tear down those buildings? Do we need to do that? Or could Chris Peoples have an idea to repurpose those buildings for township use, put our equipment in there, for example? Is that a possibility, that we could save that money by not tearing down those structures?
Again, we would lose part of the DCNR grant if the buildings were not torn down, correct?
Molly, how much?
I don't know. I mean, there would have to be a, DCNR won't fund the acquisition of buildings, you know. So we would have to calculate some value associated with the buildings and the land, and then the DCNR grant would be discounted by that. But I don't know off the top of my head.
It might be nice to get the information to see what the offset would be, should we do that. The second comment is, you know, there's a valuable piece of land there. It is really the trailhead, and it's something that is pivotal, I think, to the success of this whole endeavor. And I think that to, you know, put that at risk would be a serious problem. The second thing, or third thing, is that, you know, if you don't pay attention to history, you have a tendency to repeat it. And we already had some history with the old township building that was going to be repurposed and really kind of destroy the nature of Bertrandville. And there was a lot of consternation about what to do about that, but eventually it cost us money again to do that. So the question would be, is if somebody comes up with some creative idea to commercialize the use of that particular pivotal property, what recourse do we have should it go south as far as the purpose of it? Would it be some pollution? I mean, we have a nice story from Melissa about how it's going to be used and how it's going to be, very green, but there's no guarantee. And the question would be, if there's a problem, how much is it going to cost us to remediate that problem, to buy it back perhaps, or get somebody out of that particular business? And I think we have to seriously consider that, because this opportunity is now. And if we lose it, there's not going to be an easy way to go back and fix it without maybe spending a whole lot more money than we got from some kind of deal that we did. So those are my comments.
Could I just ask you, because you have me a little confused now, would you be in favor of the township buying that property, demoing the buildings, or buying it and keeping the buildings?
I would think that, Chris Peoples had an idea that I think was good. A couple weeks ago or months ago, whatever it was, but I was here. And he said, those are perfectly good buildings, solid structures, as Melissa pointed out, 36-inch concrete floors, whatever. They're in good, reasonably good shape.
I just wanted to clarify, so the end of your, was if the township purchased it, you'd rather repurpose the buildings. If the township didn't, you'd want them down.
No, not necessarily, not necessarily. I don't think, somebody said that you don't see them from the road, but I do. Maybe my eyes are better than other people, but, those rusty roofs kind of stand out there. They look like some kind of commercial operation. But the other thing is, why do you want a commercial operation in the middle of a natural lands trust park with trails and walking trails and all that type of thing? Then you have a fish farm over here and trucks going in and out. And okay, there's only one box truck a day today. How about tomorrow, next day when the operation expands? There's no guarantee as to what's going to happen to that property unless we are in control of it. And I say we need to keep it for whatever way we want to. Keep the buildings up, tear them down, whatever. We have the money to do it. We have this pie in the sky of things that might happen sometime down the road, but this is an opportunity now. And the Wheeler Farm isn't going to become available in the near future, as we had Mr. Wheeler here, saying that it's a family farm, they're keeping, but they don't want to conserve it, which means that someday down the road, maybe they'll want to actually commercialize it, to develop it. They have that option open. They're not willing right now to do it. As far as the other properties, who knows? Whenever, if they will become available. This is now, that's a maybe down the road. So I think that's what we have to really consider now. We have the money to do it. We're a fairly wealthy township. If we lose this, it's gone.
I think, Jim, in answer to John's question, what you're saying is you would favor going ahead and buying this land?
Yes, indeed.
And keeping the buildings.
Whatever we, perhaps Molly has more information about what the money would come to us if we do keep the buildings. I think, but whatever. We can afford to do it with or without demolition. So I think we should do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Barb Mueller. I live on Janie Lane. One of the people in charge of the Kimberton Hunt Club, and so I'm speaking on behalf of the equestrians in the room and those of us not in the room. One of the perks of the 72 acres is horse trailer parking, which you mentioned. NLT doesn't allow horse trailer parking on any of their preserves. That's their go-to, which is fine. Our hunt club was very involved with helping preserve, and we've donated a lot of money. And one of the things that I've said all along is, yes, there'll be a place where you can park your trailers and go for a hack or a ride. Those of us that have lived here forever, you used to just ride your horse down St. Matthews Road and ride through Brinco Ed. That's not so doable anymore with the traffic that we have. So wherever the township places their money, whether it's across St. Matthews or that 72 acres, I would just like to see that it provides horse trailer parking, provides a trailhead for people to be able to ride, and that if the township doesn't purchase the park, that it's locked up with enough easements that if it's the Deweys that buy it or somebody else, that yes, the trails will still go through the 72 acres and the public has access to be able to get across St. Matthews and into the meat of Brinco Ed Farm.
Thank you, Barb.
Thanks, Barb.
Thank you.
Hello, Bob Casciano here. I have a question for Lynn. Lynn, would the Dewey people, would they actually preserve the property, put it under conservation easement and farm it?
I'm gonna guess that I'm Lynn and Melissa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think I'm always Liz.
Liz, excuse me, Liz.
No, it's good. So there are a couple of pending questions. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
The easement, the agreement that the Deweys came to was that the easement that is being put on the other parcels limits everything to agriculture. The similar type of easement would be put here. Yes, it is commercial. Every farm in there is commercial, so there's no widget factory. The easement does not allow you to do anything other than specific types of agriculture. So we could grow lettuce, we could grow kale, we could not make cars. We can't do anything other than agriculture, so
Right,
the
but you
same
would
easement.
put the land under a conservation easement, that would allay some of Jim's concerns.
We're
about-
required to, yes.
Okay.
So it would be the same easement. The horse trailer parking was actually something that we had suggested putting in. I am not horse people outside of Girl Scout camp. I love them, but we're not, they don't love me.
We'll teach
But I do know you don't want people like me driving my car near you in your trailer. I know that much. So our suggestion had been that the existing parking would stay for vehicles, and then if you went to the right instead, where that 4-bay garage is, there's an area there that would be perfect for trailer parking. All the trails continue, all the public use of the land continues, regardless of whether the Deweys own it or the township, with the only difference being that there's a farm, or in 50 years, there's a ball field. So you're talking about a $1.9 million ball field acquisition, because everything else that the township would do, we're prepared to do. We even suggested putting in water fountains and a trough for horses, and we're the ones that are gonna have to mow the lawn and clean the manure. Not me, I draw the line at manure. If I'm not riding, I'm not scooping. But other than that, everything that you're looking for, we've agreed to.
So, in my professional life, I've been a demolition and remediation contractor for 30 years. And I actually looked at this project, and it is not a simple project, but it's a pretty straightforward project for any demolition contractor that's qualified and has the right equipment. Having said that, if the land is being preserved and it's an agricultural purpose, and we can spend that money across the street, that's something I think we should consider. I really do. I don't want to lose open space dollars. Just certainly don't want to do that, but you're spending a lot of money on demolition. I don't think it's as much as you said it is, John. I know what my price was, and it wasn't quite that high, and I wasn't a low bidder. There's a lot of considerations. I didn't even think about having to cross the street for a trailhead. That's certainly a major consideration as well. But I think that demolition of those structures is fairly straightforward. There is a lot of concrete. It's a cow barn. I don't think it's really practical to think you can repurpose it for township uses. I really don't. It's just not that kind of structure. But I think consideration should be given to what Liz says. I think it's an interesting concept, an interesting idea, and Molly would have to weigh in and let us know exactly what the impact would be if we switched the acquisition to across the street.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm Chris Peoples, and I want to clarify a position or two that I had that I think was a little misspoken. The first thing was, when I arrived here, there was no place out here to park. I had to park up here. I guess I'm allowed to, there's no sign that said you couldn't. And then I thought I could come in the back door, and it was like, well, no, this is like the police entrance only. So I had to walk all the way around to come around to this side. And that's with the current populations the way they are. And I had expressed a concern about, first of all, this is an ill conglomeration of concrete, stone, wood, metal siding and everything. It's not very becoming campus for West Vincent Township, I don't think. Certainly it doesn't seem to have the room to expand. I mean, I don't know where you put the parking if you were going to expand it. I know when when you do have your ball game things, they even park here. I can't imagine what would happen if there were ball game things and meeting on the same night of any kind. So I don't know how you all plan on getting around that problem. As far as the Grinquet barn goes, first of all, I would guess to build something like that probably be about $30 million today. So though one can speak of tearing it all down and everything for $1 million, one might also think of what it costs to build another one, or what it would cost to build another township building and all that sort of thing. I also don't know, this 72 acres thing's been thrown around. Does it mean that it has to be sold as 72 acres, or can it be sold as, say, 20 acres, and then the rest of it be prorated for the township and maybe be appended to something across the road? And then another irony, I think it's this Mr. Dewey guy, it's sort of a mystery in that there are certain vocations one can have for outside, such as ball fields, such as obstacle courses, such as subdivisions. Now, which would you rather have? Frankly, even if you did talk about a fish farm, what would you rather have, a fish farm, or would you rather have several ball fields like this with all those people and mommies and daddies going up there with hundreds of kids and things up around the you want to talk about increasing traffic? I mean, that increases traffic. Even if you were talking about I guess a fish thing is, but there's lots of other agricultural things, but don't sell the idea that there's something sacred about ball fields that doesn't attract crowds of cars and people. I mean, because the crowds of cars and people do come with ball fields. And it also seems that this township allows other people to use those ball fields. So I would assume that if this ball field thing came to fruition up there, we'd also see other townships using the ball field. I don't know. I don't know the way that all works. So I'm all for the Deweys getting it and doing something with it. I mean, if you don't like it because you're jealous because they're rich or they have an obstacle course, that's ridiculous. What you want is you want people that are willing to invest in this township. You don't want to get your personal back up against them because they won a lawsuit against you and you feel embarrassed, or you're trying to usurp with trying to take their personal property and turn it into social township property. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, let them invest their money and do something creative with the property that's not going to have any more impact than anything the township would do. And then maybe the township will rent from the Deweys. When the Deweys build a really nice area up there where the township building could be, and there's plenty of parking, maybe the township building might decide to move from here up to there and swallow their pride. So really, I think it out, because this doesn't work. This is a nice little room and everything, but there's nowhere to park here. You can't. And if anything expands, I mean, we hope it doesn't, but if there's more of a population, where are they going to go? So that's my 2 cents.
Next, Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Helm. I have a question and then maybe a comment. I don't understand something. So the project started, or at least I became aware of it as is discussed about a year ago. At that time, I thought we needed to buy this property in order to have the rest of the whole project move forward. So my first question...
Hold on. That's it. Molly's engaged. Yes, they needed us to be an initial part where they could then go to the Dietrichs and say this, and the DCNR agreement, we've got West Vincent Township and they're interested in this. So it was an integral part.
That's what I thought, John. And I was really impressed with the deal a year ago. Very impressed, because I thought I got it. I remember a couple of township meetings where we said, hey, the whole thing is not the 72 acres. The whole thing is the protection of the property from massive amounts of development. So that's what I thought the whole goal was. Let me come back to my question. Does the developer, Natural Lands Trust, need West Vincent's involvement at this point?
Not if the Deweys buy the property.
Not if the Deweys buy the property. All right, so...
Molly, can you answer that? That's a tough one.
The short answer is as long as there is a buyer for the 72 acres, that was, that bottom line revenue is what we need to put the whole deal together.
Okay.
When we approached the township, as John said, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we were pleased that they had an interest in this particular area and that they saw it as a recreational opportunity because it was, it helped us convince the Dietrichs that there was community support and public support when combined with the county funding and the other township funding that could make this deal go.
Yeah.
So that's the answer to
Okay.
your question.
So that's helpful, thank you. So that means I do have a comment, and that is that goals then could be met without us purchasing anything. And it just seems to me like open space funds are for a mission, and if the mission is met without consuming much or any of the open space funds, and we could then reapportion those funds in other projects, I think that you shouldn't just look at it. I think you're compelled to. I think that you're required to because open space funds are to work open space projects. Now, this looks to me like an opportunity to buy property. That's what this has turned into, because if this can occur without township involvement, we're no longer the key integral piece of this pie. It's not our key that makes this thing go, because this has a possibility of going without us. Open space funds are for a purpose. I don't think the purpose is to buy future property, and that would be my comment now that I understand we're no longer there. I completely supported it a year ago. I thought we were the key to the whole deal. But if the key can be replaced and we don't have to sign a check for anything, I think that ought to be the first option and allow you to use open space funds for open space projects. Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Can everyone hear me?
Sure, your name, please?
Karis Levin, 1912 Pemberton Road.
I didn't have to hear you.
Karis, 1912 Pemberton Road. I came here tonight to listen and learn, and I want to thank the council for the family. You were very helpful. Really put forth a compelling vision. Like a lot of people in West Vincent, my number one concern is open space preservation and ensuring that our bucolic character remains intact as much as possible. And our traditions, whether it be equestrian traditions or farming traditions, are respected. We have something very special here. I think most of us know that, and we would be foolish not to do everything in our power to protect it. The presentation, what is your name again? I'm sorry.
Anything but
Liza. Your presentation was really, yeah, it's hard to not seriously consider it. My big concern is that the easement be in place. So, I mean, if this commercial agricultural endeavor takes off, and, if it's successful for 5 or 10 years, great. The bigger question is what happens in 20 or 30 years, that in perpetuity issue. So we want that easement to be rock solid. And I also have questions about the trails and the trailer parking. I'm looking at that yellow 72-acre parcel, and I see where St. Matthews is. How would that all fit into the plan? You say that we're going to get everything, we meaning, the greater township community, that we're going to get everything we want in terms of trailer parking and trails, etc. But we all know we just can't take a word for that, right? It's got to be written down, it's got to be, it has to be a contract.
Happy to answer it for you.
Okay.
I'm going to try this another time. My name is Elizabeth. Anything but Liza, and I'll answer to it. So the Deweys had actually already negotiated an agreement with Natural Lands Trust that addresses all of this. We were prepared then to take our agreement to the township to see if there were any holes, but we had started with the township. We had their list of what they wanted. We took that to NLT, so it was just circling back to the township to make sure that nothing was missing. The easement that would be placed on the property requires us to maintain all of those amenities at our expense. I'm sorry, I just made myself a Dewey. Requires the Deweys to maintain everything at their expense in perpetuity. Natural Lands Trusts, under the terms of the easement, has the ability to sue us if we don't comply with any portion of the easement. Not only do they get to sue us, we have to pay all their expenses while they do it. So we have to pay them to sue us if this all goes south. Really exciting. That's how I like to negotiate contracts that way. In the event of a sale of the property outside of the Dewey family or the Dewey family businesses, so it can go generation to generation, that does not count, but if the Deweys decide we are all moving to Mexico and they're going to sell it outside of the business, the first right of refusal goes to Natural Lands. They have the power to extend it to the township to purchase the property. If they want the property, but they do not want the buildings, the contract requires us to demolish the buildings at our expense and remediate the property. So either way, we're footing the whole bill, come hell or high water. So if at that time, and I know everyone's saying we don't like the buildings, by the time they have a solar roof and a rain garden and have been repurposed and remediated, maybe you will find a township use for them. I agree right now, unless you guys are buying a whole lot of cow, there's not a township use for them right now. But by the time we're done with them, you may decide that you want them, which is why it is at your discretion, at NLT's or the township's discretion. But if you say no, ball fields, going in tomorrow, we must take it all down and return the area to grass. So the township is protected one way or the other. There have been some questions about the financial ability to do this. We are willing to prove that in privacy to the township. We have proven it to NLT. It's not something that needs to be public, but we are willing to do it to the satisfaction of the township. There had been a question from the Open Space Committee because they were concerned about maybe they wouldn't like the color paint on the exterior of the building or something like that. We agreed to put in effectively like a performance bond. Not really required for what we wanted to do, but to voluntarily put up a performance bond or escrow a certain amount of money until we have completed the renovation in the way that we said we were going to do it. So the easiest way to hold our feet to the fire is to hold our money, because we don't get any of it back until we've done what we said we would do. So the concerns that people have had, it's all negotiated in. Natural Lands has the right to sue us, and we have to pay them for it. So it's not even a question of will Natural Lands have the finances to sue us. We have to pay them to do it. So we are open to any questions or concerns you have. We are confident that any issues that you foresee can be worked out. What it really comes down to is, do you have a space for a ball field in 50 years, or do you have a farm in the middle of other farms? That's what this expenditure of $1.8 million comes down to. The trailhead will still be there, the parking will still be there. To answer the other half of your question, this is not the best picture. Give me 1 second. I am happy to leave this. And also, I think Tammy had asked you before if it was possible the supervisors agreed to put it on the township's website so you could see in writing what we propose. There are some photographs with it, but I'll email you a better copy. When you come in off of St. Matthews Road, there is existing a driveway here, which you would have to maintain, or we can do it at our expense.
Linda, Liz, whoever you're going by, could you stand on the other side?
I would be happy.
And I know your name's Liz, I apologize.
That's all right, that's all right. So far, nobody's hit on the worst nicknames from childhood, so we're good. When you come in off of St. Matthews Road, it is open to both sides. To the left, you're getting into the pond. I'm not towing you out. I don't recommend you go over there. Could some earth moving be done to make that work if it was necessary? Sure. But it doesn't seem like it will be, because as you come up to where they've got their little trailhead marker, There is already existing terraced parking. It needs to be resurfaced. It needs some new gravel. You might not even have known it was there, but it is there, and it is sound. So that just needs to be done, and there's terraced parking all through here. Given the estimated daily use of the trails in the preserve, we believe, and I believe the NLT agreed, that this was going to be sufficient parking. We also, as part of the agreement, agreed to allow NLT to host special events and use all of this as their kickoff point for the special events. And we had agreed to extend that to the township. You want to have community day up here? Knock your socks off. We'll work with you for it. But the terrace parking, once it's resurfaced, would be fine. As you come into the right, there is a 4-bay garage with some offices at the end. That end with the offices is where we propose putting in the bathrooms, so that they're right there. You get out of your car, cross over the driveway, there's the bathrooms, there's the water fountain, there's the trough, the bike rack, all of that's there. Put in some picnic tables so you can sit down and have something to eat. The bays of the garage, somebody had questioned about where's the township going to put its things. If you were to get these lots, you need to go mow a lawn. We had also agreed to rent for $1 to the township 1 or 2 bays of the garage. The reason we need to rent it to the township has to do with liability and the township's immunity, not because we want your dollar. But that way we can give you have the garage, you can store your stuff, nobody has to worry about driving it up St. Matthews Road. We really are trying to find a way to make this work for everybody. Was that both of your questions, or was there a third one that I missed?
Where's the trailers gonna go?
Where's trailers? So over to the right, once you pull in, there's a space between the garage and the body of the main milking parlor. That is where the farmer, who was currently using it for all his storage, had some of his larger equipment. It is also gravel, pacted, and structurally sound, but needs to be refinished. That, to us, seems like a great place to put the horse parking so that you have cars going into the left, horses continuing on and coming over to the right, so that there's no contact between people like me and people like you. You don't want to be a horse. So we're open to questions. We're open to concerns. None of the trails are moving. All of that's still there. We can probably work out just about any concern that you have. And we are willing to meet again with the township in private to address any financial concerns they have about our ability to actually do the project.
One concern is the right of first refusal for National Lands Trust. If you sell it outside the Dewey family, there's no guarantee as what that's going to cost at some point in the future if it's determined that the new owner is not going to be as desirable as one might say to maintain the character of the preserve. So the question would be, what kind of assurance that you're not going to pay someone a reasonable price or something above what Natural Lands can afford to conserve the character of the area?
You're actually the first person that has asked that. Natural Lands didn't ask us that. That's not something that we've negotiated. To answer the bulk meat of your question, though, for someone to not do the preservation, the easements are in perpetuity. So even if tomorrow they sold it to somebody else who wasn't keeping it up, NLT has the right to sue them, and they have to pay NLT to do it. So the enforcement power all resides with NLT. So it's really a question of, do you think they'll actually be watching us? And given the interest the township has and the focus the township has on what's going on in and around the area, I am highly confident that people will be watching us. And if we step out of line, we're going to hear about it. The easement agreement, I think, gives you 30 days to cure something that you've done wrong. There's not a long time. At the end of that 30 days, we start paying them to sue us. Anybody else?
Sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
All
Why are
those.
the viewers so interested in this particular piece of land?
Part of it is proximity to where they live, which is just off the bottom of the map here.
Oh, but show where their new house is.
The Deweys are not moving. Where's Sarah? I heard that voice.
That's my girl. Liz and I know each other's names.
We do. We're like that. Oh, here we go. So the Deweys live down here. They which is throwing me, because this is labeled as Art School Road, but they live down here with here, Art School Road dip through, gotcha. They live down here. Madeline Dewey will be living here. She is renovating that home. Marcia Dewey will be living here. There's a lot of Deweys. Each of Mr. and Mrs. are each one of 6. They've got 7 kids. There's lots of spouses. There's lots of people to live here and to keep an eye on the farm. The appeal of this is just that because of the way the floor is poured and the way everything is set up, it just lends itself to this type of farming. And it doesn't really lend itself to anything else. So it just happens to be buildings that are going to be demolished that could be used and are situated perfectly and are exactly the right size for what we want to do. If the township keeps the parcel, then we go somewhere else to a warehouse and do it. We would not build it, because I think Chris is probably right. The cost to do it is staggering. You would just put the project in a warehouse somewhere instead. But it just, the way they have all these troughs and the drainage and the slope, everything just lends itself perfectly to aquaponics.
And they're resident of this township, and so would carry on and support this here.
Right.
Felicity, could you repeat your question a little louder?
That was just that this Dewey family are residents of the township, and so they also have an interest in maintaining the quality of life in the area here.
Presently, 5 of the 7 children live here.
In West Vincent?
No, the Dewey house is actually, this is West
Right,
Pikeland
there's
right
West
here,
Pikeland,
sorry.
right.
Is West
Okay,
Pikeland.
I just
right
wanted
there.
to clarify that.
Yes, we're over the border into West Pikeland, but from the standpoint of do we live in a community? Yes, 5 of the 7 children live here, with 1 expected to come home in about 2 years. With her husband and family, so.
Thank you, Liz. Any other questions for Liz while she's up there?
I might have some, but does anybody else want to get in line? Because sort of every time somebody comes up, I add one and take one off, so.
Regarding the easement, does it preclude the construction of any new structures, even if they're related to agriculture?
No, because the solar roof would be going in, and one of the things that we had talked about from an educational standpoint is that in this space between the existing building and the outbuilding, so the main cow palace and the outbuildings, that field in between is where we were talking about putting like picnic tables, because part of the vision is that if you bring in the entire 3rd grade, and that's 3 homerooms, one's going through the farm, one's having lunch, one we had talked about a museum, so in that area, we would also like to, as shade for the picnic tables, put a solar panel. So that counts as a building here, that counts as a structure. Because if you have the panel down at ground level, kids can see it. They can see the electric meter running, they can see the panel, they can touch the panel, they can learn about it. If the panels are just on the roof, it's not the best educational opportunity. So those would count as structures. There was also a request for a gazebo up here by the pond. That counts as a structure as well. We were willing to put that in. Do we have the ability to make a second cow palace? No, because the way the easement is negotiated, so if you come in off of St. Matthew's Road and you draw a ring around, a little bit wider than the ring road, because some of these buildings are on the far side of the ring road. So if you draw a ring around the existing buildings, that's the only place that we're allowed to do this. So there physically isn't an ability to do something. You could tear down the cow palace and put something else up, but the whole point is we want the cow palace.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody. Mike Floyd. I live on Louise Lane. I can give you I've listened to Liz's speech here, and I can't see why the township would want to spend their own money when they've got somebody willing to do everything for you. Certainly can divert those funds to a more useful project. And to those that don't know the Deweys, I happen to live on Louise Lane next to their farm. And I have to tell you, these folks are the real deal. They take care of that farm. They love the road. They have their horses there. Everything is maintained. They have a guy there cutting the grass. Yes, I listened to all this, and I'd have to say that the township should let him happen. Let him do his thing, and you'll sit back, reap the rewards, and be able to spend your money on someplace else. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I have a lot of questions. I got really pretty confused, Liz, about you would buy the 72 acres and the 71 acres, and where did that leave us with no acres, right?
Not exactly, so,
Okay, closer.
that was,
You were going fast, you do a great job. I hope they're paying you really big bucks.
I would recommend anybody work for the Deweys if they can, they're a great family. But, so the 71 acre purchase as well was not public knowledge before. There was some concern with NLT because what were they going to do with these 3 parcels if the township didn't want it? So to make NLT whole and to assuage their concerns, we had agreed to be a backup buyer. That if the township wanted out, we would be a backup buyer. There were several different propositions. We would buy the land and then resell the parcels to someone who wanted them. NLT hasn't found a buyer yet, so apparently that wouldn't be tomorrow. We'd have to hold them for a while till we found a buyer. You can put a house on each of the parcels if you want, just like anything else in NLT. So maybe you build a house and then you sell it because it's more attractive if the housework is already done. There was talk about a sustainable farm. So at one point, the Deweys had offered to be lead benefactors and to take the reins in a effort to come up with the funding to be able to donate these 3 parcels to NLT. NLT would like to run an educational sustainable farm similar to Rushton Preserve out in Willistown that would allow young farmers to learn about sustainable farming, to learn about the cutting edge technology that there is in farming, and to do it in a manner where they didn't have to leverage everything everybody in their entire family owned to get up and running. Some of the things that we talked about, again, it's very much like Rushton Preserve, that you could put in a building that students could go in, take a class there at all different levels. One of the things that Rushton Preserve has started doing to fund itself is they do farm-to-table dinners. Some of them are educational, but every once in a while they do a very, very fancy one with a high per-plate count, and it's a fundraiser for them, and that's how they pay for things on the farm. So there were several different options that were discussed to try to allay everybody's concerns about how would the finances work out.
All right, so in that scenario, there was no parcel recommended for the township to buy because you were getting the 72 acres for the tilapia, and then you were going to do this joint venture kind of lead agent thing to put in a sustainable, some kind of wonderful farm there.
We would be the backup plan for that. The desire was if the township wanted those 3, and the township wanted to do a sustainable farm, maybe, because that's a lot of ball fields. So if you put in some, because there had been talk
It would be a
before,
diversification of their business.
you could do a partnership between the township and NLT and put in a farm. There are a lot of ways you could do it, but NLT's concern was, what if we don't find a buyer at all and we can't make the whole deal work? And our response was, if you can't find a buyer at all, we will help you out.
John's trying to get in here.
No, I think we've got the point.
Okay.
Do you have another
Oh,
question?
yeah, I want to know about that cost of demolition. Does it include the cost of demolishing the 2 houses? What percentage of the demolition cost is the cost of demolishing the 2 houses?
I'd have to figure that. Do you have
It
that
is
100%?
included, and it was about probably $35,000 to $40,000.
Okay, so you still wouldn't consider subdividing them off and making them lower cost housing for 2 opportunities for people to live in West Vincent?
It'd be hard to make them lower cost.
Would be hard to
Make them low income housing.
I didn't say low income. I'm not talking about affordable housing under the HUD requirement.
Right, I know.
But they were offered for sale previously at $160,000. That's a
Have
low
you
cost.
looked at them?
Pardon me?
Have you looked at them? I walked through them. You're at another 60 to 70,000.
I'm not looking to buy it, but I'm saying that there are people for whom another 60 or 70 is still a very good opportunity to buy a parcel in West Vincent. So I just want to know what your intent is. So your intent is to tear down those houses. Would the Deweys be tearing down those houses as well?
No, that's not the plan. The plan is to actually rehab them and make them available for rent. Most likely to an employee of the farm,
Or
who
two.
otherwise is not gonna be able to afford to live here.
Or two houses?
Right.
Okay. The inspection of the site, we asked about it at some EAC or Planning Commission. They said you did a phase 1 survey. This is a Brian question, I guess.
Phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay, so phase 1, is that just the document search?
Yes, phase 2.
What is phase 2?
If there's anything revealed in phase 1 that requires further investigation, they'll do samplings and investigative work.
But, so if phase 1 comes up negative, then phase 2 is just another piece of paper?
Well, it's not another piece of paper. I mean, there's a historical research, there's government research, there's site reconnaissance. I mean, there's a lot involved in phase 1.
So there were no hazardous concerns on the 72-acre parcel?
That's correct. The phase 1 did not raise any concerns that require phase 2.
Did the phase 1 on other parts of the Brincoed Farms raise the issue of the dumps, or were those raised because we knew they were there?
No, that came up in the phase 1 and the phase 2.
So they did show up?
Yes, they did.
So if there's something there, we're not putting the township at risk in thinking that they might be buying
The township
something?
does not risk with anything done in phase 1 or phase 2.
I understand you've already removed some of the tanks.
Both dumps have been cleaned up.
Oh, I'm back on the farm parcel again.
Okay. Remove some of the tanks?
Yeah, somebody said.
Yes, there were some underground storage tanks, gasoline and oil, heating oil, and they've all been removed.
Hey, Bob, does that reduce the demolition cost?
That was not part of the bid that we submitted.
That was actually done.
Okay.
That was actually done by the Dietrichs prior to us taking.
Oh, okay, so
taking possession.
you guys didn't do it, it was part of your due diligence.
But it was also done under the guidance and the watch of the township's engineer and our environmental engineer.
On these two maps, something written said about the map that was updated in October of 17. Is there a difference between those two maps? The old one that's been here since last fall and the new one that's up to date?
The most significant difference is there was a lot, which had been previously designated as Lot 20, which is in the southern portion of the preserve. We have placed that into the preserve. It's no longer a lot for sale and building.
I guess that's good news for us in the preserve.
Yes, it is. The preserve in West Vincent Township got larger by about 25, 30 acres.
Okay. Liz, I know you think my name's Sarah, but you were calling me nobody a lot earlier. Because I am the nobody who cares about high-density housing at the edge of our township in Pemberton. I'm the nobody who is concerned about what gets built on property that's trying to reduce its density by selling its TDRs. But I also know that we're a long way from Mr. Cutler being able to build 21 houses because there's a lot of sensitive headwaters of the French Creek there. There's a lot of wetlands. There's a lot to be conserved before one would look at whether 21. You could come up to 21 on a TDR worksheet, but it doesn't necessarily generate 21 building lots. We've seen that time after time. So I just want you to know there are people who do care in the township about many of those things that you just rushed by. So I represent the nobodies of West Vincent.
I'm not rushing by anything. What I have learned from this community is that there is a high value and a high focus on limiting development here. It is very open, lot of lonely landscapes, lot of farming, lot of animals, a lot of farm animals that are pets and not cattle or not stock. And the focus has been to keep density very, very low. I went to the sustainability fair. On my way to school was the first time I ever saw houses on top of each other. Where I live, I have a quote-unquote big lot. I have 4/10 of an acre. So this is drastically different than where I am. My point in that was to liquidate the entire fund on a project that someone else is willing to finance that meets all of your goals except for a ball field, when you could redirect those funds to other things, makes no sense to me. You were at the open space meeting where there was an argument over whether you could come up with the $2,500 to do an updated TDR on the Hill property, and the answer was no, because we're liquidating everything on this parcel. That doesn't make sense to me.
Liz, I'm sorry, we're covering this over and over and over
Look, I
again.
was about to tell her,
So please, let's-
okay, so, the cost of improving the 71 acres for fields. I was on the Parks and Rec Commission in West Vincent when we looked at the property now known as Weatherstone C around the basin, and it's got an agricultural easement on it, but we looked at a part of that to see if we could put ball fields, a baseball field and a soccer field there, and we wanted a 90-foot baseball diamond because this one's a little kid diamond. There was not enough space, but the real consideration was, although it looked flat, there would be a lot of earth moving to get it in shape to put fields. There was a lot of earth moving out here. And that field does, yes, it's not as hilly as the 72 acres, but it would require a lot of work to turn it into a sports complex, which I don't think we're looking for anyway. John, a couple of weeks ago I said something you were very surprised by. I said, I agreed with you. I agreed with you about the value of the 72-acre parcel, the existing driveway with good sight distances on and off St. Matthews Road that was engineered for cow trucks and carrying all kinds of stuff away. And so it's got parking, it's got engineering, it already has electricity, sewage, well water. And I guess I disagree with the assessment that there's only 10 or 12 useful acres there, because the lower part of that parcel where the silos are is also useful acreage. The road that goes down towards Madeline's farm is also useful part of the connections within there. There's a lot of infrastructure in place that could really benefit the township's use now or later for parkland. And what you described a couple of meetings ago about what was essentially a passive park with access to the trails now, and the potential to build out not a field, but what we might need in the future. We don't know. The sports keep changing. I can't keep up with the games people play. But I just wanted to tell you, I agreed with you a couple of weeks ago. I hope we still agree tonight.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, I think, who estimated the trail traffic? Was that natural land? You thought I was done. Oh, Liz mentioned it, but the trail traffic, okay. Okay, I'm going to skip a couple of these because they're for Brian. I'll catch him later. Thank you very much. And John, I did agree with you. I hope I still do.
Anyone else? Oh my.
You're in trouble now.
Your name, please?
Maria Jacobs, Beaver Hill Road. First, there's been a lot of great conversation tonight, and I don't envy the three of you in making a decision, because I think it's going to be hard. I don't envy me because I know you'll have lots of sleepless nights, as will I. But I also, something just keeps coming through my head, and it started with Maury and his quote from Johnson & Johnson. And in my career, I've purchased a whole lot of property and have dealt with a whole lot of people. And the thing that keeps coming through my head is there is no free lunch. And I've yet to ever find that free lunch, particularly in real estate or in anything else. So I think that's where a lot of us sit here and keep saying, there's no free lunch. And I don't understand, and so I'm struggling around that, because there's a whole lot of stuff here that sounds like there's a free lunch. And that's just a comment. But one question I do have is, and I'm sorry, I had to make notes on my phone. What happens, there was a comment that said you had the right to tear down the Cow Palace and build something else. Is there, and so we're hearing this wonderful, sustainable farming thing that is proposed, and I have to admit, it gets me as well. But what happens in X amount of years when you don't want that, and that Cow Palace now gets demolished? What goes up there then? What Mr. Berge made a great conversation as well about what happens in perpetuity, and that's a real concern. You really hit all of my points. So what happens if that Cow Palace comes down? Natural Lands Trust, what can they build there? Is it open? Can they build anything there? I don't know. I don't have that answer, so I'm just asking.
I mean, you're asking about something in the future. I mean,
What are they? I guess what I'm asking is, what does the easement prevent, and what does it allow?
well, the easement, there is a minimum protection area that would encompass what the Cow Palace is. So whatever happened would happen within that minimal protection area. It's limited in size. It has restrictions as far as building height.
So I guess my question is, if they are operating a commercial use out of it now, and we all know that the zoning, that all goes, and I guess, to our solicitor, so it could be a commercial use of something else in that footprint. Would that be correct?
Is your easement limited to agricultural?
It is. Regardless of what the zoning is, the easement limits us to agriculture.
Is that, I guess I would like to hear that from Natural Lands.
Well, no, that's not true. The minimal protection area is an area, it's not, I don't think it's restricted just to agriculture.
It was the residential use and agriculture was what was in the discussion. Let me rephrase it. We are willing for the easement. Our understanding of the
I
agreement
understand, but
was
my question
agriculture
is,
and
could you allow them to answer my question, please?
Honestly, and I apologize, I haven't looked at this agreement in a very long time, and I don't remember what it says. And the use, the zoning now, I believe, is agriculture. I think our assumption is that it would remain in agricultural use. Whether the easement is explicit about that, if Liz remembers it as being explicit, then I don't doubt that that's true. We never finalized anything. These were discussions. So our position has always been, because the township has been such a good partner, because the township expressed an interest in this parcel very early on, that we were not going to sell it to the Deweys if the township wants the parcel. And they think it's in the township's best interest to acquire this parcel for a park either now or in the future. So any conversation that we had with the Deweys and any agreement that we had with the Deweys was not in any way a final agreement. It was speculative based on their proposal and what they wanted. But we said to the township, this is not something we are going to pursue if you, the township, wants this parcel. So that's where we are. So the township has indicated to us that they would, pending, further discussion and public input as is occurring here tonight, then they're going to make a decision about this parcel. And the supervisors may decide, with all of your input, to acquire the parcel because they think that's in the best interest, or to sell to the Deweys. We would, for us to sell to the Deweys, we would and will seek input from the township to make sure that whatever agreement we reach with the Deweys reflects their priorities. That's why there's a discussion of a, what is it, the round building?
Gazebo.
The gazebo. That's that's why there's a discussion
I
of
would argue.
gazebo. That's not something Natural Lands would insist on, but there was an interest expressed at one point along the way when the township was considering this parcel, that a gazebo would be a nice amenity to have overlooking the pond. So what you're hearing here is sort of a...
So what we're hearing here is a lot of speculation as to what could be, but not necessarily what is a done deal.
Is what the Deweys have said they will do. There is nothing in any written agreement that has finalized that.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's a really important part. So another question I would also ask is, so just to clarify, the palace could come down, Dewey's could take it down, and anything could go up there. And we could be thinking that we're preserving a palace, but we may not be, right? It's a possibility.
Well, as Liz explained, the Cow Palace, if the Deweys were no longer interested in the property, and the reason that we included in our preliminary discussions a requirement that they take down the Cow Palace was because in order for us or for the township to be able to afford to recover, to repurchase that property, it would be in our best interest, or the township's best interest, that it not have the improvements on it, which would make up the value. So that was the point. If we do not exercise, if we wouldn't exercise a right of first refusal, or if the township wouldn't exercise a right of first refusal, then it would go on the market, and it would be subject to whatever the zoning and the easement restrictions that were in place at the time.
Okay, I think I'm following you. The other thing is on that right of first refusal, and I know you said that that was not negotiated, but I think that that would be an important thing to know ahead of time before a decision is made, that in that event that the township, because you know what, cost of money changes and values of properties change, and it could be completely out of our ballpark in the future. So I don't know how you could even make a decision on that without knowing what that cost of first refusal would be. And then just last to clarify, ball fields got thrown around an awful lot here, but that's just kind of like a red herring because it's never really been mentioned that we need ball fields. I am on Parks and Recs. Parks and Recs has said, you know what, we probably don't need any more ball fields, we're probably okay. And if we needed to, it's just, and there is other land here, so I don't think the intent has ever been from the board and all the meetings that I've attended that it was ball fields. So I would just like to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara? Just as a point, if you don't mind, because we have other gentlemen, we're going to try to wrap this portion up by 9 o'clock, if that's okay. That gives you...
That's a good goal.
Yes, that's my goal.
Goals are good. All right, so my first hat that I was wearing as equestrian, my second job, which is really my full-time job, I'm a horticulture teacher, so I teach aquaculture and hydroponics and all the stuff that you're talking about, which sounds really cool. My question is, are you looking at medical or medicinal marijuana as a future crop? And if you're going to apply for that, the security and all the ramifications that go with a grow like that?
The references to cannabis have every single solitary time been raised by someone not a Dewey, not associated with us. It was made, I believe, as a joke by someone else at one meeting and then became one of those rampant rumors that come true. The Deweys have no interest in medical marijuana. The hoops one has to jump through, because I have other clients that I've helped apply, the hoops you have to jump through and to even apply for a license as a growery or a distributorship, they're astounding. It's not something, and quite frankly, it's something that can be addressed through zoning, if that's really the concern.
Will it be in your covenant with the National Lands Trust that the agriculturals will exclude marijuana?
It would depend at this point on what the overall deal is, because at some point, as a business deal, the project doesn't make sense. So are we open to it? You and I discussed it before, yes.
Yeah, because I can't necessarily control it through zoning. I can through a covenant.
But we're also talking about things like locking into a price now for a sale of the property in 100 years. I can't agree to a price now for a property
Well, I
in 100 years.
understand that part.
So at some point, if it makes
I
sense as a
understand that
business
part, but
deal.
let's revert back to marijuana.
Right, and what I'm saying is if the overall package as a business deal makes sense, cannabis is not a deal breaker for us. But it has to be an overall package that makes sense, because at the end of the day, it is a farm, it is a business. It has to make financial sense.
I understand that, but you're willing to covenant that there not be marijuana grown at this facility in perpetuity?
If the overall deal makes sense, the cannabis is not a deal. The Deweys have no interest in doing it. Is the property worth more to a seller in the future if there are no limits on what crop can be grown? Sure. Do the Deweys want to grow cannabis? No. So that's why I say it's not a deal breaker. It's not part of their plan. It's not what they want to do. But lawyer to lawyer, we don't like giving up things that a property can never ever do in the future. So
Well,
if the overall deal makes sense,
That's
yes,
what we're going to insist on.
then we'd have to know what the overall deal is.
Well, you negotiate whatever deal you're going to negotiate, but that's the starting point. That no marijuana be grown at the facility.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barb.
I'll be quick. Except to say, Liz, the way you've presented your client and their interest in doing business in the township, you talked about the cost of doing the licensing for marijuana being prohibitive. Well, look at all the money you're proposing they pour into this project. I can't worry about, if it's a business decision, they would decide to invest in it if it was gonna make money, so.
This isn't known, though. It's,
I
the
know,
whole
but
thing
it's-
would be conditioned on knowing that the township is going to allow us to grow kale there. The cost to apply for something that's
I'm
such an
just saying
unknown
that,
is different, that's
that
apples and
one
oranges.
doesn't have much credibility because of all the money you've already piled in. So the other thing, the zoning there, I really came over to look at the map. It's R2, so it would revert to, our R2 is one house per 2 acres. So that's the current zoning on that property if it is not conserved.
The easement does not permit you to subdivide it at all. It permits one primary and one secondary residence on any parcel. So there is no opportunity to subdivide the 72 acres and make 2-acre parcels.
But you already have 2 accessory dwellings on that parcel.
No, there's a primary and an accessory dwelling. If we wanted to build a different house, we would have to knock one of those down.
Okay, so you're going to declare one of them as primary and one as a secondary, and there would be no further residence built on that parcel.
Correct, or knock it down and build a residence. If the whole property changed to a residence, you could take down the cow palace and put a house there. That's a possible thing. Well,
I guess
you're
that's-
limited by impervious and size and all those things. It's the same as everywhere else.
Right,
You have
but
one
you s-
primary and one accessory.
Right, but you'd
and
have
you
to-
cannot subdivide the parcel.
You'd have to knock down the cow palace and one of the houses.
Yep. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but yes, you could.
Yes,
Do we
go
have time
ahead.
for one more quick question?
Sure.
I'm like rubbing my neck because I'm getting like a muscle spasm from all of this talking. I just want to be really clear that if the township considers this, it's really important that the lawyer-to-lawyer work. There have been a couple of comments that this sounds too good to be true, and I kind of feel the same way myself. And I'm not challenging the good faith of the Deweys. I think we're fortunate to have concerned and residents with so many resources. We just need to make sure that it's all written down. And thank you for speaking up about the cannabis issue. That's all.
I would work with, the attorney for National Lands Trust is a very good attorney.
Yeah.
I would work with him very closely to make sure that the township and the National Lands Trust were protected from future events, and everything you're hearing represented is reflected in an enforceable document.
My last question is, would the public access to this 72-acre lot, which in reality would be a private lot owned by the Deweys, but they're saying it would have public access comparable to any other natural lands trust property, which is usually sunrise to sunset. Am I right about that? So I could go out for a run in the morning on the trails, I could be walking with my kids and my dog on a leash, and I would not be charged with trespassing.
Correct. The buildings would not be public. You'd have to be
Right.
invited into the
Sure,
buildings other
sure,
than the
granted.
restrooms. But, yes.
But the trails and it would be public access sunrise to sunset?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Folks, at this time, what I'd like to do, with your approval, is get the three of us with Molly and Brian back in the executive session, and we'll try to keep it really short, within 15 minutes, and be back out in front of you, okay? So, Judge, is that okay with you? You care to join us, Judge?